we go.
Of anything they have to offer me, right? It's like, get over yourself, Mark. You've got to.
I believe if we could be indivisible, we would be indestructible. And
Hype after this. I don't mean to ask you to put you on the spot to say, tell us what's going to happen in the future, but tell us what's going to happen in the future.
good.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Keep Leading Live. Keep Leading Live is dedicated to leadership development and insights. I'm your host, Eddie Turner, the Leadership Accelerator. I work with leaders to accelerate performance and drive impact through the power of executive coaching, masterful facilitation, and professional keynote speeches. If you're joining us from LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, where we're broadcasting, would love to see you join this conversation and drop a note in the comments to let us know that you're here. Let us know your reaction to what you're hearing. Even ask a question so that our guests can answer that for you. Additionally, we welcome you to hit that share button so you can share this with your friends who may miss the interview live, but be able to see it afterwards on social media. Conversation. Have you ever given your employer a 2-week notice? If you are a working professional in any capacity, the likelihood is, unlike days of old, you're going to do that more than once in your career. How did it go when you did that last time? In fact, why are we still even giving 2-week notices? Is that still necessary in 2024? My guest today says we need to rethink the 2-week notice, and he has created a proprietary method that he offers as the solution that is a formula for a better way forward. My guest today is actually a repeat guest, Robert Glazer. Robert Glazer is the founder and chairman of the board of of the Board of Acceleration Partners, which is a global marketing agency. He is the recipient of numerous industry and company culture awards, including Glassdoor's Employee Choice Award for 2 years in a row. He is the author of the inspirational newsletter called Friday Forward, which I believe the last time he and I talked had like somewhere over 100,000 subscribers. So I have to get the new number from him today. He's also a #1 best-selling author for the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and the international best-selling author of 5 books: Elevate, Friday Forward, How to Thrive in the Virtual Workplace, Moving to Outcomes, and Performance Partnerships. Well, today we're going to talk about book number 6, and that book is Rethinking the 2 Weeks Notice. Robert, welcome back to Keep Leading Live.
Eddie, thanks for having me. You set a high bar for matching your energy, so I'll try to bring it.
Oh, you always do, sir. You always do. You and I said that we had you on in 2020, so I'm happy to have you back. Folks who haven't listened to episode 81 of the Keep Leading podcast will listen when we talked about lifting others up as leaders. And Robert and I are both members of the esteemed Marshall Goldsmith 100 Coaches community, where we are with other amazing leaders. And we came together last summer for the third annual meeting of the community. And during that time, we were with some other great people we love. Remember this, Robert?
I do. Yeah, that was a great shot.
Oh, yeah. Belmont University's a beautiful facility that they allowed us to be
pretty,
at.
yeah.
Alyssa, amazing writer and author, and of course, the legendary Dory Clark and all of her great work, and so many other great folks. So we have a long history together. So tell me, this book, new book that you have out, you have been writing about this in the Harvard Business Review. So we've seen a little bit of your thinking on this. What made you turn this into a book?
Yeah, so I have been talking about this for a few years. There was the article in Harvard Business Review and then the TED Talk in 2019. And a lot of people who watched that talk or reached out and just tried to do anything different in their organization would reach out to me and say, wow, this really works better. And that was without sort of a playbook or an instructional manual. They were just frustrated with the 2 weeks paradigm as I was. So I wrote the book after that in 2019, 2020, and then this little global pandemic happened, and we had, massive layoffs, and then we had hiring, and then we had the Great Resignation, and then we had quiet quitting, and it kind of never seemed like a good time in the supply and demand imbalance. But I realized if I didn't do it, it wasn't ever going to get done, and the problem still existed, and part of the problem was, again, these zero sum sort of games between employees and employers. And so I dusted it off and went back and sort of updated what I had written for, I think, the modern workplace in terms of, again, it's just silly to me. People, as you said, we are not in lifetime employment anymore. We have changed so much about how we hire people and cultures and how we onboard them and everything. And we have not changed anything about hiring. And the way people leave organizations, enables a lot of distrust and sort of operates in this mode that we're all pretending like it's lifetime employment anymore. And we know it's not, but we're still running that playbook.
Yes, people, the idea of lifetime employment, when your folks and my folks were working, they worked for 30 years, 40 years, at pensions, got a gold watch, and you live life happily ever after. And that just isn't the way it is. And it's, for different generations. So Generation Z, I think I saw one of the stats was, I think you can expect to have at least 5 jobs.
In their 20s, I think a lot of people today under 30 would say, look, 2 years is a good amount of time in a company. Right. Whether it was great or it was bad, 2 years is good. So I would guess that number would be so much more than 5. That would imply almost a little more than 1 per decade. But yeah.
All right. Well, one of the other things I want to make sure folks know is that not only is this book available now online, you are also offering it, at least for today, I'm not sure how long you're promoting this, 99 cents. So get your copy, folks, on Kindle. Get a copy of the book for 99 cents as long as this promo is running, and certainly the hardcover as well.
Yeah, the 99-cent book is through the end of the week. You can also get the first couple chapters for free on Substack. As I said, if you're not Adam Grant or Oprah Winfrey or Malcolm Gladwell, you're not writing books to make money. I really want to see companies and leaders and organizations change this paradigm, and that's really the sole motivation for writing this book.
Fantastic. And as you wrote this book, and coming out of what you said, what has what's been the biggest reaction you've seen from people as this book has launched just a couple of days ago, in fact, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great response. I'm kind of surprised. I woke up this morning and was, number 1 in 30 different categories on Amazon. I thought I might be talking to sort of a small group of kind of change makers, but it turns out there's a lot of frustration around this, probably particularly from employees. However, it is really not on the employees to make these changes. It is on the manager and the leaders and the employer to say, look, we are a company where we have open conversations, when things are going wrong, and there's psychological safety, and you can come and talk to your leaders, and we won't walk you to the door for doing that. So there's always problems. And one of the pushbacks I get about this sort of program and this notion of an open transition program is that, hey, like, by the time this person's going to leave, it's bad and it's toxic, and they just need to go. And because I advocate for these transition periods, and that sort of misses a big point about this entire system, in that if it's like, let's just say it's November right now, and I've got to fire someone this week, and it's going to be ugly, and they're toxic, and they're already pissed. The signs of problems with that employee probably were in February or March. And it was actually the work that I didn't do then and the honest conversations that could have maybe led to a couple of good results of them still working in the company, maybe in a different capacity or solving those problems, or realizing that like this wasn't the right thing for them. And we could have moved on, before it got really bad for both sides.
Yeah, so often it deteriorates. And in some cases, even when there was a good relationship, the mere fact that an employee submits the 2-week notice, I've seen situations where they were treated as a disloyal person. How could you be looking around if we were in a relationship and you've been cheating on me?
Yeah, I mean, as I opened the book and the TED Talk with, if your partner came to you and you didn't think they were unhappy at all, and they told you they were moving to a new city with a new partner in 2 weeks, no one would say that's normal. I understand why somehow, in the job market that has happened, but people remember, if you're doing a conference, they always say people remember endings and beginnings, right? So have your best speakers, have a great opener, have a great closer, do the most important thing at the end of vacation. And I think employees miss a lot that, how they leave these jobs is their lasting memory. And one thing I talk about in the book is like, they don't realize, particularly, look, 2 weeks notice in the Great Resignation was a long time. People were giving 1 day's notice or no day's notice. There's a large world of reference back checking, right? There's a lot of people who can figure out where you worked and know someone. And I get reached out all the time. And you can leave a pretty, you don't, even names that you aren't giving, if people feel really burned by how you left that job, you can have some, detractors out there who can serve as sort of an invisible barrier to your career growth. So it's just better for everyone if we try to end things. Think about a breakup. Or divorce, like when it ends so acrimoniously, it's not good for anyone, right? Like people break up. So like, how do you do that in a more productive way?
Indeed. And pulling on the thread that you mentioned there about best openers and closers for your conferences and events, you are a keynote speaker. I'm a keynote speaker. So we definitely want to make sure folks know that we're two people that can call to do that.
We only do opens and closings. Don't use us in the middle. Take your high risk people in the middle. Yeah.
We must get that plug in there for sure. But yeah, so you have this track record and people who will call off record to check in on people because of the way things ended. And so you offer a formula, in fact, to chapter 3, I think it was in the book, about respect, RESPECT.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that's missing in this process. That was so the concept of an open transition program is to create a way for people to leave that sort of creates better outcomes. And the notion that you can have this transition timeline. So either the company leads a transition or you say you're interested in doing something else, and there's a period where you can continue working and looking for your new job. And again, it's kind of an open transition. And to do something like that, you need psychological safety, you need communication, but you need this sort of mutual respect. And there's a psychological principle of cognitive dissonance, I think, that happens a lot. Well, so what happens is so Eddie's my employee, and Eddie is like really struggling, and he's missed quota for 3 quarters in a row, different Eddie. And I know I'm gonna this isn't working with Eddie, but I like Eddie, right? And so I have to, let's just say I have to fire Eddie or tell him that it's not going to work out, but I like Eddie. My brain can't handle those two things, right? That's dissonance. Like, I really like Eddie and I have to fire Eddie. So it has to bring one of those things into congruence. And what it does is usually you start to emotionally distance yourself from the person and make them out to be a bad person and a problem and create a narrative, because then it makes it easy to do a bad thing to a bad person. It's hard to do a bad thing to a good person. And if you had operated from this place of respect, you would have been able instead to lean into the relationship and be like, Eddie, I love you. You've been working here forever. Obviously, like, sales is not your thing. Like, this isn't working. Like, what do you want to do? How can I help you? Should we look at stuff inside the company? Should we look at stuff outside the company? While I love you, this can't go on like this forever, right? So I understand why people do, but I don't think they realize they start to actually distance themselves from the person, become disrespectful. And that's when a lot of the problems start. And I think it's because they know in the back of their head, they're going to have to deal with this. And they don't really want to.
You're so right, Robert. And that is precisely what happens. You have to demonize the person to make it easier to take that action when you could do it in a much more respectful, loving way. And that's why oftentimes when you have these conversations with people who are no longer with an organization, you've got two different narratives and it doesn't align with each other. And it's like, that's right. The person I know, even other customers or even other people who work with the person have a different view. So I love how you highlighted that. And that makes so much sense. We have a couple people joining us. In fact, one person is joining us from Facebook, someone who I haven't talked to in a long time. Teresa Jackson, thank you for tuning in and listening to our conversation on Facebook. She and I went back and got our degrees together from Northwestern 25 years ago as adult learners. So good to see her online. And that means I have to check in. It's been a little while. So thank you for tuning in, Teresa. And we also have joining us Ezra Miller, who I met a couple of months ago. She is joining us from Istanbul, if I remember correctly, overseas. So great to have you tuning in and saying we're so lucky to learn from two great keynote speakers. We appreciate your feedback, Ezra, and appreciate your support. One of the master certified coaches in the world. So if anybody's looking for a great coach, she is someone who I recommend. Now, also, Robert, there's this idea of, I talked about the disloyalty, but what would you say about sometimes what happens is there's this counter offer that is when the 2-week notice is turned in.
Yeah. I've written articles on this. Counter offers are a really bad idea. So in business, a lot of times we point to exceptions and we celebrate exceptions. If I'm doing the same thing over and over again, I would rather play the odds. And I think the odds are that when you counter someone, they're not with your organization after 18 months. Because you probably haven't fixed the problem, right? Or dealt with it otherwise. So if you were really pissed about, if the problem really was salary and you were arguing about it, well, you're also then going to be bitter that it took you telling them that they were going to leave in order for them to, pay you. So that's I don't think counteroffers are a great idea. People will point out to the one that worked out of 10. But my thing is, if something has a 90% failure rate, you should just go with a rule on that. And we should you should either cure problems before people get to that point, or you should recognize that it's not solvable and, one of the parties needs to move on.
Well said. And then you also have a situation where now you've spurned the other employer. Things didn't end up working out here at this employer. So now you got two bad relationships where you would have just hopefully not had one, but it would have only had the one.
Yeah. And if a company won't give you what you want unless you threaten to leave, it's just not a healthy dynamic for anyone in the first place.
Yes, with rare exception. That is absolutely true. Ezra's weighing again. She says yes. And then says, what an honor to hear this. Thank you very much. So yes, the wisdom that you're sharing is very much appreciated, Robert. Well, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a quick pause, and I need to acknowledge the sponsor of the Keep Leading podcast. So we'll just pause here for a brief second and share. Just realized I didn't pull that up. There we go. If a single employee's indecision can cost an organization $10,000 to $1 million, imagine the potential financial impact when more individuals are added to this indecision equation. It can spiral out of control quickly. Decision X is a bespoke, on-demand service designed to help your leaders overcome indecision and move forward with their work. Visit Papillon MDC and discover how you can help your team get unstuck, shift perspective, and advance today. PapillonMDC.ca. The website's right there. on the site. And so we're really appreciative to Happy MVC for being a sponsor of the Keep Leading podcast. All right. So, Robert, as we transition back here to our conversation, what I would want to know is also you talk about the need for us to get into there's three buckets that you would kind of categorize everything into. Can you briefly share that with us?
Yeah, so this is when you go the three roots of most employee problems, right? There's things that the employee can fix and has to do the work on, things the employer can and wants to fix or change, or things that are not going to change. So again, let's imagine your employee is a little disengaged and not doing great work, right? You can keep telling them they're disengaged. You can keep writing them up. You can do performance improvement plan. That's sort of like giving someone Tylenol for a headache rather than getting in there and figuring out why do they have a headache in the first place. So, this will be Reggie, not Eddie. So we dig in with Reggie. Well, I might find out that Reggie has lost, his childcare and has been trying to work around these hours, and so has been exhausted. Also, like, he just doesn't have the training he needs. Well, I can then work with Reggie and say, look, we can adjust your hours temporarily, but like you're going to have to figure out this childcare thing, and you're going to have to do this training, and we'll work with you. But this is on you to make these changes. Well, number two, Reggie might be like, I don't know, upset about not getting a raise or a promotion, and maybe I dig in and those things are actually warranted. And or it needs a change of teams, right? It came from the marketing team onto the sales team. That's not working out. The marketing team would love to have him back. And I kind of dig in and I say, you know what? He's right. Like, we're hiring people at a higher rate than him, and I understand that's frustrating. So we fix that, right? And it gets better. And then the third one is, let's say I'm a remote work environment, and Reggie's like, I really want an office, and we want offices. There are some things you just have to say, sorry, Reggie, when you came here, we told you we were remote only. We told you this is part of our culture. You said you were up for it. Like, we're not going to open offices because you want them, because most of our employees don't. So that's why I talk about sort of digging to the root, right? Because each of those problems that is showing up as Reggie not doing great work and being disengaged has a different root and needs to be addressed or solved in a different way.
Good. And do you have you have several case studies that you go through in the book that support your hypothesis? What is one that you might be able to share with us briefly that shows how this is an effective solution that people should be implementing?
Yeah, so my favorite case study is and is actually someone named David, or that's his pseudonym. And David was a great employee for us for a long time, and he started to get really frustrated. And his manager had sort of one of these happiness and engagement conversations I talked about, like, what's going on? Like, look, a lot of my job is managing people now. We're bigger. I liked being in the data. I think I like data analysts, data science. And we said, that's great, but right now we don't have the need for a data scientist. It could be 6 to 18 months until we do that. Why don't you think about it? We'll think about it, like what we can do in the short term. But we could sense that like this wasn't going to be tenable, right? Either he needed to get back to some of this work that he loved, or he was going to continue to not be super engaged. Now, during that time, a partner of ours sent me a note and said, hey, I'm looking for basically like a data analyst on my team. It was a big Silicon Valley company. And I actually looked at it. I shared it with our leadership team, who all knew the situation, because we kind of tried to have these conversations. And we all were like, yeah, that's kind of his dream job. We should let him interview for that. So we reached out to him. We reached out to the company. I was like, look, I know this might be a surprise, but I actually have an employee who'd be a great fit for this. We've been having some conversations with him. We know he wants to do something different. So we're happy to have him interview with our blessing. We also told him, look, if it doesn't work out, again, we're not going to fire you. We're going to figure something out. Anyway, he got that job. He's been there for 6 or 7 years, moved to California, doubled his salary, has been at that company forever, doing great. And actually last year they became a client of ours as well. So
how about that?
And so there's just good karma around these things. It was the right thing for him, but this never would have happened had those honest conversations not sort of come about, and the psychological safety for him to start that conversation with his manager and say, I think I'm going to want to be doing something different by next year.
Indeed. Well, what a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing that case study with us. And you describe that there are 7 steps to a successful transition if we're going to do this right.
Yeah. So if you read the book, or you kind of have a program and then you're ready to kind of move someone into a transition, there's sort of 7 steps I think are part of it. The first is have a written plan. Everything needs to be clear, including the timetable, which is number 2, what the expectations are, what it looks like if it doesn't work out, kind of this is how it's going to work. Maintain really good clear communications. Hey, I'm going for an interview this day. I'm in the final round. I might get an offer next week. If I do, they need me to start in 2 weeks. Like keeping everyone sort of on the same page. That's 3. 4 is open your Rolodex. I've written hundreds of notes and emails to people going through transitions at our company and to other companies that they've identified, of people I know in my network. So have other people on our team, trying to get them the right role at the right place. 5 is provide internal resources. Again, your own HR team could practice interviewing with them, look at the resume. The goal here, back to that respect, is look, just because it's not working out here doesn't mean we don't care about you and you don't have value and want to see you go become successful elsewhere. The 6 is third-party support. Again, maybe the person needs some retraining. Maybe they need a recruiter. Maybe they need job placement services, co-working, like what will help them. And the last one, just make it personal. There are a lot of interesting ways to help people that don't even cost a lot of money. There's a story one company shared about the person really needed a suit for the interviews he was going into. So again, rather than firing them, not having them working and paying them a severance, as part of that program, they got them a suit and helped them out. So those are sort of the 7 components, I think, to any successful transition program.
But now, if I just listen to you describe those, especially I think it was number 3, what if I'm afraid? I am afraid that if I go in and tell my employer that things aren't working out, I'd like to go somewhere else, and let me please work with me so I can do this smoothly with you, that they're going to just fire me on the spot. Let me help you out.
Yeah, so it's a great point. And this has to be led from the company, and they have to promise people that won't happen, as we did. I'm not advocating that if you're listening to this now, you go and say, okay, I'm going to go. If your company marches everyone to the door right after they give a notice, you don't want to do that, right? This has to be the company and the leaders saying, look, we're changing how we do this. You can trust us. You can call us out on this. When we rolled out this program, we said to our employees, you can call us out. You can go on Glassdoor or whatever. I promise you, if someone comes and starts one of these discussions, they will not be walked to the door. We will figure something out. It's not going to be indefinite, but we will figure it out. And I think that took a lot of the burden off them, or the fear off them.
Which is one of the reasons you have such a high employee satisfaction rating, as reflected on what's being commented about your organization on Glassdoor. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, what's the main point you want our listeners to take away from our conversation?
Yeah, so this is a broken paradigm. I think most people, if you say, tell us, hey, the door closes, someone steps into your office, they say, can you speak a minute? Everyone gets that sort of like horrible feeling they've been part of that discussion. So we all know this sucks. I just don't think we know how to fix it. And I thought a lot about this, and I've talked to other leaders, and we've tried this in almost over a decade. And I really do believe that this is the foundation of changing that. So if you're frustrated with this problem, if you're, it's like not what you want to be doing, but you just don't know what to replace it with, like the book will give you some clear frameworks and advice on how to do that.
Excellent. And so now this is the Keep Leading podcast, Keep Leading Live. I love quotes. I always love to know, as a leader, what quote do you live by that helps you to keep leading, or the best advice you've ever received?
They're probably one and the same. I've always loved the quote, how we do anything is how we do everything. And I just think that's a great mantra for anyone in any leadership role.
Absolutely. Very good. Well, thank you for sharing. I wanted to also say thank you again to Teresa, who tuned in from Facebook, and also Ezra, who tuned in from LinkedIn. We appreciate that. And I saw several folks on YouTube, but the names didn't come through, so it didn't mean not to acknowledge. But anytime I see the name come through, I definitely acknowledge that. If you would like to learn more about Robert and his work, please visit roberttglazer.com. Follow him on social media. And by the way, Robert, I forgot to get that stat from you. How many subscribers to your newsletter do you have?
I think it's close to 130,000 now.
Wow. That number just keeps going and growing. That is very, very impressive. So we want to make sure you go out to see Robert at his website. Follow him and the great work that he is doing there. Any other comments you want people to know, Robert, who are following and tuning in?
No, again, if you're interested in the book, newsletter, podcast, all the different things, they're all at Robert Glazer, GLAZER.com. And I encourage you to check it out. Again, you can read on Substack. The first couple of chapters of the book are up there for free. So you can read it and decide if it's something you're interested in learning more about.
Well, excellent. Thank you for being a fantastic repeat guest on the Keep Leading podcast. I really appreciate it, and love knowing that we can now have a new way of thinking about the 2-week notice. Thanks, Robert.
Thanks for having me, Eddie.
And thank you for listening. That concludes this episode, everyone. I'm Eddie Turner, reminding you that leadership is not about our title or our position. Leadership is an activity. Leadership is about action. It's not a garment that we put on or take off. We must be a leader at our core and allow it to emanate in all we do. So whatever you're doing, always keep leading.